Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel, and in today's video we are going to look at type 1 hypersensitivity. But before we go further, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and also don't forget to like and share my videos. Without wasting much of your time, let us get started. First of all, we need to define what is hypersensitivity. Hypersensitivity can be simply defined as an exaggerated immune response to self or non-self antigens. Type 1 hypersensitivity, it is also known as immediate hypersensitivity. It is also known as an allergic reaction. So first of all, we need just to have a brief understanding of what really happens in type 1 hypersensitivity. Type 1 hypersensitivity, it actually involves initial activation of T helper 2 cells and the production of IgE from B cells. Then IgE binds to mast cells, and during secondary exposure of IgE-coated mast cells to the same antigen elicits degranulation. So let us really now understand what really happens in type 1 hypersensitivity. In this image, we can see that we have got the mucosal lining. So the mucosal lining can either be part of the respiratory tract or the GIT. And here we can see that we have got an antigen. And in this case, our antigen is the pollen. An antigen that is known to cause an allergic reaction, it is called an allergen. So our allergen in this case is a pollen. So when this pollen actually crosses the epithelial cells or the mucosal lining into the tissues, it encounters different white blood cells. So in this case, we have got dendritic cells, we have got naive T cells, T helper 2 cells, and B cells. So the dendritic cells, these are part of the innate immune system, and they are known as antigen-presenting cells. Dendritic cells, they engulf this allergen and present it on the MHC2, or also known as major histocompatibility complex type 2. When they present this antigen or this epitope, they are going to cause the naive T cells to bind to this epitope and become activated or mature to become T helper 2 cells. Once they become T helper 2 cells, they are going to cause the production. Once they become T helper 2 cells, as we can see in this picture, we have got the mucosal lining. This mucosal lining can either be part of the respiratory tract or the GIT. We can also see that we have got these epithelial cells that are part of the mucosal lining. And we've got also an antigen. In this case, our antigen is the pollen. An antigen that is known to cause an allergic reaction, it is called an allergen. So we can see that this allergen crosses the mucosal lining into the tissues. Here in the tissue, it encounters various types of white blood cells. And we have got dendritic cells, naive T cells, T helper 2 cells, and B cells. These cells are vital in type 1 hypersensitivity. Dendritic cells, these are cells that are called, or they are part of the cells that are called APCs, antigen-presenting cells. And they have got a protein that is called major histocompatibility complex type 2 on their surfaces. So once they engulf this allergen, they are going to present it or present the epitope using the MHC2. The naive T cells recognizes this epitope and it matures into T helper 2 cells. Once it becomes T helper 2 cells, it means that it is now able to produce cytokines that are going to activate the B cells, eosinophils, as well as the epithelial cells. These cytokines that are produced by the T helper 2 cells, we have got interleukin 4, interleukin 5, and interleukin 13. Interleukin 4, it is very important for the heavy chain class switching in B cells. We know that B cells, they have got IgM and IgD on their surface membrane, which acts as receptors. Therefore, for B cells to change from IgM or IgD to other antibodies, it needs to be able to undergo a process called heavy chain class switching, where the heavy chain changes. So for IgM, we know that the heavy chain is mu. For IgD, the heavy chain is delta. For IgE, the heavy chain is epsilon. So in this case, they need to change from delta or mu to epsilon, because we are interested in this case in IgE. So interleukin-4, it actually causes the heavy chain class switching in B cells. And then we have got this allergen which binds on the same receptors on B cells, and it causes the maturation of B cells to plasma cells. And we know that plasma cells are simply mature B cells. Plasma cells are able to produce antibodies. And in this case, the antibody is IgE. Once this IgE is produced, it binds on FcR1 receptors. So these receptors are receptors that are found on cells such as mast cells and the basophils. And they've got high affinity for this antibody, which is IgE. Once IgE binds on these receptors, the process, it is called sensitization. So we can say that mast cells now are sensitized. So during the secondary exposure or repeat exposure to the same allergen, this allergen is going to bind on these two antibodies, and it's going to cause linkage or cross-linkage. Once this linkage is formed, it activates the mast cells or basophils to produce these granules. And these granules, they contain mediators. So we have got vasoactive amines and lipid mediators, as well as cytokines. Vasoactive amines and lipid mediators, they are responsible for the immediate hypersensitivity reaction, which occurs minutes after repeat exposure to the same allergen. The cytokines that are produced by the plasma cells, the cytokines that are produced, in this case, they are responsible for the late phase reaction, which occurs 2 to 24 hours after repeat exposure to the same allergen. As we can see, the T helper 2 cells, it produces interleukin-4, interleukin-5, and interleukin-13. Interleukin-4, it causes heavy chain class switching in B cells. Interleukin-5, it activates eosinophils and neutrophils, which are part of the late phase reaction. Interleukin-13, it actually activates the epithelial cells to start producing mucus, which eventually eliminate the allergen. So now, let us look at some of the clinical syndromes that occurs due to type 1 hypersensitivity. The most severe one is anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis can be caused by different allergens, such as food, such as peanut. It can also be activated by bee sting and drugs such as penicillin. So the clinical and pathological manifestation of anaphylaxis is fall in blood pressure, which will result in anaphylactic shock. It is actually caused by vesicular dilation, air obstruction due to laryngeal edema. The other clinical syndrome also is bronchial asthma. Bronchial asthma, it actually causes air obstruction caused by bronchial smooth muscle hyperactivity, inflammation, and tissue injury caused by late phase reaction. We've got also allergic rhinitis sinusitis, which is also known as hay fever. It is actually caused due to increased mucus secretion, inflammation of upper airways, and sinuses. Then also food allergies. They increase peristalsis due to contraction of intestinal muscles, resulting in vomiting and diarrhea.